Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. Welcome to Extra Crispy. For today's video, we got a video by Austin Sweat titled Comparing Current NBA Players to All-Time Greats, Part 2. I think I reacted to Part 1 whenever it was released, but basically he's going to have like a certain NBA player, and he's going to compare to an all-time great, literally like the title says there, man. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good today, guys. I found, well, actually, King of the Fourth Quarter found every single NBA Finals game on YouTube TV, so I'm all about that right now, watching my 2004 Detroit Pistons before this. Game 1, it was a really good time, so here we go.
Part 2 of comparing current NBA players
Feeling
to
geeked up, man, about
Detroit. Multiple players to do so we can
16 years
find
ago.
The most accurate comparison out
Oh,
there.
well.
In Part 1, we looked at about half of the league's stars, including guys like Steph Curry and LeBron. And for Part 2, we're looking at the other half. If you haven't seen Part 1, though, go watch it now. But if you already have, enjoy Part 2, starting with...
If I remember, I'll put Part 1 to what I reacted to.
All-time comparison is a blend of Chris Mullins and Rip Hamilton. And
yo, Rip, speaking of 2004, man!
There was a ton of shooters to choose from, but we also needed a great defender, since Clay is both of those things. But he's not the most athletic, and often finds himself as a spot-up shooter, and that's the perfect explanation of Chris Mullins.
Okay, yeah, Mullins.
Rip Hamilton fits the Klay Thompson comparison because he didn't shoot a ton of threes, but when he did, for a lot of his career, he was extremely efficient, as well as being one of the better on-ball defenders in the league.
Also one of the most athletic players.
These two men made perfect.
Did you know every single day before his games, when he was younger, his father made him drink a gallon of water and eat pineapple? I don't know why I remember that, man, but I remember for a while when I was playing some basketball, I always used to do the same thing, except it was double cheeseburgers and milkshakes, but pretty much the same thing.
Perfect.
Gotta nourish the body.
Staying on the subject of the Warriors, though, comes Draymond Green, and Draymond was another tough one to come up with, but we eventually went with the popular comparisons he's received over the years, being Dennis Rodman and Charles Barkley.
Easy, yep.
He's nowhere near as good of a rebounder as either man, but he's got top-tier diverse defense like Rodman, and a similar...
I would say Scottie Pippen and
now he's also
Rodman.
Nowhere near the scorer Barkley was, but I mean, if you combine Barkley's offensive ability with Rodman's, you'd probably end up with something right around Draymond's level. As for Barkley, though, Draymond's the slightly better shooter, but both men still did score in similar ways overall. Next is my favorite comparison of the video, and that is that Giannis compares to a cross between Shaq and Scottie Pippen.
That's a good one. That's actually fantastic. Because I was just watching Shaq, and it just like... the way he dominates the paint, it's different, but like the way but Giannis also dominates the paint like crazy, man. So yeah, you add in just like a more forward-esque guy like a Scottie Pippen, plus the all-around game, the defense. That's perfect comparison right there, man. That's absolutely on point.
And I think this is perfect.
Yep,
I mean, Shaq has already said Giannis is the next Superman, and recently said that Giannis is the modern-day version of himself, and again, it makes sense. Sure, they don't have similar play styles, but both men have been the most dominant in the league.
I call him the prototype Shaq.
Their size, and score most of their points in the paint. I mean, if Shaq was transformed into a perimeter player, it would look exactly like Giannis. And
lost about 100 pounds.
Scottie Pippen would get
just saying.
There. Scottie wasn't a great shooter, but was one of the best defenders in the NBA, and that's right where Giannis is at right now. So I think both Pippen and Shaq combine perfectly to give you Giannis. Paul George's all-time comparison would then have to be a cross between Scottie Pippen and Tracy McGrady. Now his draft day comparison was just Scottie Pippen because he had great defense, which is still true, and the reason that comparison still stands today. But back then his biggest weaknesses came from the offensive side of his game. And the fact that he's earned a comparison to T-Mac at this point shows... yeah,
I know he can like create his own shot and stuff like that, but I also always thought Paul George was a great like spot-up shooter, so I would like to see a guy that was more of a spot-up shooter on there too, you know?
How much he's developed.
Not so much shot
he's
creators.
Athletic and can score in the paint, but
I guess Scottie could play off MJ, but still.
Similar to how McGrady played. And George has become one of the better scorers in the league that can create his own shot similar to Tracy, and one of the best one-on-one defenders similar to Scottie Pippen. The comparison for Victor Oladipo was a little tougher though, and another one that was influenced partially by his draft day comparison.
Tony Allen?
Was Tony Allen. And that's
Tony
the
Allen
first
with
half of
offense.
His current comparison. But I guess the other half would have to be D Wade. He's definitely got the defensive ability of Allen. But
damn, imagine that, bro.
He's more of a slasher that gets most of his points around the rim, plus has a solid mid-range game. He might not be the offensive player Wade was just yet, but so far he's a lot better than he was from 3. So with all that being said, overall Oladipo's got a pretty similar style to both men. Okay, now this next one's probably going to be controversial, because we have Kawhi Leonard.
Yep.
And a lot of people have turned on Kawhi this year for sitting out a lot of games. But you gotta understand, the man's running a marathon here, and not
I would also say Scottie Pippen.
Spurs taught him. but that's besides the point. The point is that his all-time comparison is Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen.
Damn!
It's a comparison to one of the best defensive players of all time and the greatest player of all time.
Wow.
I get it, but he's got the defensive Pippen, and that's not even arguable. And I'm not saying he's as good of an overall player or even a scorer as Michael Jordan by any means. But
I want to say by any means. I mean, he's a pretty damn good player. Like, yeah, he's not Michael Jordan, but saying that well, not even like I wouldn't that like nobody's in Michael Jordan's class except LeBron James. So, but yeah, like a tier or two down, it ain't
honestly,
far off.
The way that they do score and play is pretty similar. Posting up smaller players, making very little mistakes with the perfect combination of mid-range, threes, and drive into the paint. Might be controversial, but I think this is a good comparison. A perfect comparison.
Maybe you should have said Kobe.
To Kawhi's former teammate in Pascal Siakam for comparing to
Blake
Chris
Griffin.
Webber and Andre Kirilenko. And this one's perfect. Kirilenko was a great defender that got most of his points through rim running, scoring off the dribble or on putback dunks, which was how Pascal played up through last season. While Chris Webber has all of those abilities, along with the ability to shoot threes, mid-range, post up and score,
I love his
and
passing.
the ability to get the ball to open teammates.
Yeah, one of the best passing
Siakam
big guys all
has come out
time.
and shown massive improvements on this season. At first, this comparison was only going to go to Webber, but eventually adding Kirilenko just seemed like the perfect fit. I will say though, Andre Drummond's all-time comparison wasn't so easy and probably isn't the most accurate,
Bill Russell.
but I do think it's good enough. In 2013, after he was first drafted, people were honestly saying he could be the next Shaq. Now the only thing they have in common today is their rebounding ability and size, with Drummond weighing in at 280 pounds.
Also, not a good free throw shooter. That's the comparison you don't really want. But also, Drummond's defense has been a lot better too.
But the better overall comparison would have to be a blend of Moses Malone and DeAndre Jordan.
That's that's fair.
Not as good on offense as Moses was, and not as good on defense as DeAndre was.
And honestly, underrated defender though.
Last traditional centers in the league.
He don't get props these days.
He's got the ability to play off the pick and roll and stay open for lobs.
Look at the numbers.
Jordan did, and can attack the rim and control rebounds similar to Moses. And as a traditional big man, I think he could still be extremely efficient on a lot of different teams. And
yeah, you don't build around him.
Was tough, but finding one for Zach LaVine was just as hard. And I'll admit this one's also not too great.
Say Derrick Rose.
Up with a blend of the Milwaukee Bucks, Ray Allen, and David Thompson. Thompson was a great pure scorer who was one of the most athletic players of his time, which is similar to Zach. While Ray was athletic and could and would shoot the lights out from mid-range and three. LaVine definitely can't shoot as good as Ray can, but they do have a similar combination of inside and out scoring tendencies.
See, I would have liked to see, because I'm one of those people that like understand Ray Allen was like more than just a 3-point shooter. He did have some athletic moments, but I mean, this man Zach LaVine is an athletic freak in nature, so I would like to see maybe just like the way he attacks the basket, like a Dominique Wilkins or someone like that. You know?
So combine all of those things from both players, and because Zach's such a diverse player, I'd say it's as close to as good of a comparison as you can come up with.
I would say Dominique.
Well, on the other hand, Kyle Lowry really only needs one player to compare to, and that's Chauncey Billups. I would have really never thought of this comparison until looking into it, but it makes perfect sense. Neither man was a great athlete or has been a terrific scorer.
I've seen that from Kyle Lowry for a while now. He reminds me just like the way he plays the game, like slow slings downs and stuff, just like Chauncey.
Double-digit assists,
just like Chauncey.
Or had standout stats in general. But they were the leader of their team and played effectively in similar roles.
They controlled the team.
Shooter and leader than Lowry is, but recently Lowry's proved to be the better all-around scorer. Plus, Lowry's played a big role on a championship team, and so did Chauncey.
Yes,
and
sir.
Speaking of Lowry's,
yes,
Lauri
sir.
Markkanen's another guy who we found the perfect matchup for. While on draft night, his NBA comparison was Nikola Mirotic and Ryan Anderson, I think one even better would be something between Kevin Love, Rashard Lewis, and Ryan Anderson.
Bro, no,
I mean, his game
I see Bargnani, man.
Love, but he's also much more...
And Bargnani was not a bad player either, by the way, guys. Like, no, he wasn't like first pick material like he got, but I mean, he was still like a decent enough stretch.
More athletic than him and better at attacking the basket, which is where the Rashard Lewis part comes from. And with how he shoots the ball and can also be a spot-up shooter is where he relates to Anderson. I don't love three-player comparisons, but I feel like for this one, if I would have left
little piece of this, little piece of that,
it wouldn't have been complete. Then next, we're gonna look at one for John Wall,
Derrick Rose,
John Wall before the injuries and the overpaid contract,
and Rondo,
just for fun. And this was another tough one. The best I came across without spending hours looking for a better two players was Derrick Rose and Russell Westbrook.
Hey, I was close.
As explosive as Derrick Rose, while being a score-first type of player. Athletic like Westbrook, and wasn't a great three-point shooter.
I would say his playmaking is more Rondo-esque than it is Russell Westbrook-esque,
like both men, but excelled at attacking the basket, as well as sharing a similar intensity on the defensive end. Now the easiest comparison of the video goes to Trae
Steph Curry.
because he without a doubt falls right in line with a mix between Steph Curry and Steve Nash.
Yep,
The
easy.
Steph comparisons came in college, even though he said he resembles Nash more. But he's definitely got traits from both men. I mean, Steph and Steve are pretty similar players.
He's
as
Steve Nash
is.
with the green
They were
light.
both great shooters that weren't great athletes, but they ran their offense and played just like Trae does now. I would say at this point though, Trae definitely relates more to Steph Curry. He isn't the passer Nash was, at least yet, and is scoring just as much as Steph usually
He's a good
does.
passer, but
For
he
Bradley
don't got the
Beal,
mirrors.
He's another guy who only needed one player to compare to, and it was tough to come up with at first.
Michael Redd.
But again, we're going to the Milwaukee Bucks Ray Allen for this one.
And it was a
I mean,
Bucks.
It's weird. Beal plays with such a generic style, and that's not a knock on him. It's just he's like your prototypical NBA shooting guard. Like if you were making a shooting guard in 2K, and for every category give him all moveset number 1, I'm sure they'd come out playing just
Bro, he's
like
Michael
Beal.
Redd, man.
Maybe with an added step back, but for real though, that's why it was tough to really compare him to anyone. But I think with Prime Ray Allen's fundamental style, it's a good fit.
I kind of want to make a video like this now, you know what I'm saying? Just like, I don't know. Maybe go, well, I guess he's saying all-time greats, which Michael Redd wasn't that. He was a nice shooting guard, and then he had injuries and stuff.
Then if
but
you combine John Stockton and Isaiah Thomas, you get a player that looked very similar to Chris Paul, who had all the passing ability and defense that
Damn,
Stockton
two great
had,
players to be compared
and the
to.
offensive ability and leadership from Thomas. I mean, Isaiah averaged just about 20 points a game his entire career, and so is CP3, while Paul has also led the league in steals and assists multiple times,
Plus the defense.
and also making multiple all-defensive first teams, very similar to John Stockton. Then Donovan Mitchell wasn't that highly up for the NBA draft, with his comparison being Norman Powell. But since then, he's really transformed his game into being more like a Dwayne Wade type of player. Mitchell's the better shooter and shoots a lot more often than Dwayne did, but how they control the offense and score a majority of their points off.
See, I don't like to put those type of things into, like, my opinions, you know, just because, like, the way the game has been played over the years, it's so much just more high volume now, you know what I'm saying? So like when you say a guy like shoots more, you almost can't just make that comparison though, just because of the way the game's played, you know?
Basket is where the resemblance.
Because D Wade be shooting more now too.
If
it was prime him
the Rudy
now.
Gay comparison might be a little
Big Ben.
controversial because I'm thinking Sean Bradley and Dwight Howard are good fits here.
I'd say
Rudy's
Ben
got a
Wallace.
similar wingspan and length to Sean Bradley, and that was his draft day comparison because of that and both of their abilities to block shots. But then he's also got a similar overall game to the Orlando Magic Dwight Howard. Now don't get me wrong, that Dwight is by far better than Gobert in every way, but Rudy's like a slightly watered down version of him. They control the paint similar on defense.
Great value,
and
man.
The offense played similar roles.
The Walmart
now for
Mamba.
The next one, I'm sure a lot of you have never seen Bernard King play, but he was pretty much
Oh yeah, I was
Carmelo
at went to
Anthony
all
of
those
the
games.
80s, and it was who he said he really modeled his game after. They were both top tier scorers who had a great mid-range game and excelled at scoring from anywhere on the court, whether it was with their back to the basket, from the three-point line, or under the rim. Then a combination that made up Karl Anthony Towns
Dirk?
took some thinking, because he's got one of the most diverse overall skill sets for a center that we've ever seen. I see a lot of Kevin Garnett and DeMarcus Cousins coming from him though. He can post up.
Not bad comparisons, but I think you really got to account for how he's stretched his game out. And like Boogie and KG was never killing it from the arc,
Really
you know?
just as good as either of them, has the defensive potential that KG had, and can score from the outside just like they both could. I mean, Towns is shooting
Not the outside, though,
42%
like Cat
from
do
three
it.
right now, which is insane. For his teammate in Andrew Wiggins, though, things could go in a couple different ways.
Kobe.
I've seen comparisons for him of Vince Carter and Rudy Gay, and other ones of T-Mac and Clyde Drexler.
Where's Rudy
but I think
Gay?
a cross between the two of Clyde and Rudy Gay would give the most accurate representation of the type of player that Andrew
Sometimes
is.
Josh Smith,
After his hot start to the
unfortunately.
year, he's kind of dropped off, but overall he's still got a solid all-around game and a decent jump shot. Speaking of Andrew Wiggins though, he's one half of Brandon Ingram's comparison, with the other half being Kevin Durant. And it's insane how similar he plays to KD now. In his Lakers days, you could
Uses
see
that
how the
length
comparison
like,
made sense,
KD.
but it wasn't super accurate. But since being on the Pelicans, they're nearly the same player, with how he hits fadeaways and can pull up from anywhere. And there is a little bit of Andrew Wiggins in there too, with how he attacks the rim. But now finally we have the last comparison, and it belongs to Damian Lillard. And this one was tough, but I think we nailed it. With Jay Williams and Gilbert Arenas being who he resembles
Yo,
most.
Hibachi.
Jay didn't have a very
Hibachi.
long career in the league at all, but I mean from his Duke days, you can see that his and Dame's games are almost identical. But then from a shooting and athletic standpoint, I see some, not a ton, but some of Gilbert Arenas with him. And these are two players that really...
Gilbert Arenas was shooting from Curry range before that was even a thing. Like he was like he was like the guy that like made it happen, you know?
Too often for how good they were, so it did take some digging to find this matchup for Lillard. But that's gonna wrap up part 2 of this video. These were pretty.
All right, yeah, that is the end there, guys. Very enjoyable. I love videos like this because it's just like it really gets you thinking. So let me know in the comment section below. Do you feel like he nailed the comparisons, or is there something you would change? Thank you all so much for watching, and peace out.